Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 575, and today's date is January 26, 2015, and the title of this episode is U.S. Government Central Bankers Are Accelerating War to Cover Up the Economic Collapse. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand out in Greece, the Syriza party, they have won the elections. Now, from the opinion polls, we kind of knew they were heading in this direction. They were leading by quite a bit, and it looks like, yes, they have won the elections. Now, the Syriza party is out there, and they are saying that Greece is turning a page, leaving austerity behind. Syriza party says bailout agreements have ended for Greece. Syriza says Troika era is over for Greece. Syriza says government ready to negotiate, cooperate on debt. And we can see right now that many people were taking their money out of the banks because they were very nervous. Goldman Sachs has warned if you do not elect the proper party, things will go wrong in that country. Well, we can see that that's exactly what happened. And we'll have to see what the central bankers are going to do at this point. But we can see right now that the Greek government is looking to maybe write off some of their debt. And, of course, will other nations follow this? Of course, we understand that other nations are looking at this to see, let's see what they do, and maybe we can do the same thing. The U.S. is out there, and they are saying, listen, U.S. will plan to work with the new Greek government. We will support their economic recovery. Well, it's amazing. When things don't go their way and the opposite party is elected, all of a sudden they're coming out with support and they're going to help with the recovery. Where were they the last 5, 6, 7 years? Nowhere to be found. Now all of a sudden everyone's going to help with the recovery. Well, guess what? I don't think the new Greek government really wants the help of all these countries. They need to look inside. They need to get rid of this debt. They need to push their economy forward and deal with those countries that are going to help them spur economic growth instead of continually piling on debt. And they realize this right now. And we can see that other countries like Spain, Ireland, Italy, they're all looking at Greece right now, wondering what they're going to do because they might follow. German Chancellor Angela Merkel assures us that, don't worry, that this will not be contagious. It will not spread to other countries. They will not try to write off their debt because a debt is a debt. No matter how you get that debt, you have to repay that debt. Even if it's through fraud, even if it's through lies, or by breaking the law, it's still a debt. And this is the way the central bankers see it. They only see debt as debt. They don't care how you arrived at receiving this debt. You still have to repay it, which is completely fake, phony, and false. This is what everyone wants you to believe, but it is not true. If they need to write something off just like Iceland did, they need to get away from the system. Guess what? Every country can do it and say, you know something? We're done with you. You created this money out of the thin air. Since you created it out of thin air, we don't own you a dime. And definitely they can do this. In principle, collective efforts are welcome, but at the same time, a debt is a debt, she said. Greece's debt burden is to be considered within a broader restructuring of sovereign debt in the Eurozone. Its leader, Alexis Tsipras, has called for a European debt conference based on the 1953 London conference that wrote off half of post-war Germany's debt and extended the repayment period for the rest over a number of decades. Whether Germany agrees to restructuring or not, what cannot be paid back won't. Germany either agrees to debt restructuring or Greece will default. And we can see right now they're looking to restructure, write off the debt, and extend the loan repayment, whatever is left. And we're going to have to see if Germany agrees to this. Now, I understand that Germany is very nervous about the breakup of the EU, and it looks like they have taken preparations to protect themselves, where I'm starting to realize that they're starting, from information, that they're printing Deutschmarks now, just in case they leave the EU. Now, we also see here in the United States, because with everything going on, with the economy collapsing, more and more companies are coming out telling us that, yes, our earnings are absolutely terrible. I mean, BP right now, because of the oil suppression of the price of oil, we see that they have froze 84,000 employees' pay. They will not be getting raises or anything like that because of oil continually dropping. Mattel is out there saying, listen, our earnings are way down. Sales fell 6%. Sales of the iconic fashion doll fell a staggering 20% in the third quarter, contributing to a 22% drop in profits and 8% decline in sales for the toy maker. Now, their sales were terrible during this holiday season. What does this tell you? This is their busy season. The holiday, the Christmas season, this is the busy season for all retailers and especially toy manufacturers. And they have seen sales plummet. What does this tell you? The holiday season was a complete disaster. So far, we've been seeing stores right after the holiday season close. During the holiday season close, we see mass layoffs. And now we're seeing toy companies letting us know that it was a terrible holiday season. Now, there were rumors out there that IBM was going to lay off about 26% of their employees, which would equal about 100,000 employees. And IBM is out there saying, no, these are all rumors. We're not laying off 100,000 people. We're only going to be laying off about 10,000 plus. Now, we're going to have to watch this very closely because most of the time when these corporate people come out and there is a rumor like this started, they try to not let it spread and try to make it like it's not as bad as it's going to be. And we can see right now that we're going to have to watch this very carefully to see if there's a lot more than 10,000 people going to be laid off. And they're calling it ridiculous. Where did this rumor come from? And we can see right now IBM is not doing as well as it used to be. And we can see they've been laying off quite a number of people. They laid off a lot of people last year. And it's looking like they're going to be laying off a lot of people this year. And we'll watch this very, very closely. We see that manufacturing is still sliding here in the United States. It is not getting better. We see the Baltic Dry Index. It did shoot up to about 763 points. And at this point, it has come all the way down back to 703. It is down again another 17 points. And we can see this is great indicator to show us how manufacturing is doing, because the Baltic Dry Index is the raw material that is being shipped around the world. It is kind of protected against speculators, and we can see right now it is continually falling and it is not improving whatsoever. Now we see that S&P has cut Russia to junk, and we can see right now that Russia is out there blasting S&P, and you have to remember they decided to void any credit rating from S&P, Fitch, Moody's. They decided, you know what, it's not even worth it at this point. We know it's all fixed. We know it's a setup. We know that central bankers are controlling these rating agencies, and we have to go back to the subprime securities when they were rating all of those AAA, and pension funds were taking it, and people then lost a lot of money because they believed these credit rating agencies. And as we know, the banks do pay into these credit rating agencies. They control them, and we can tell we really can't believe these credit rating agencies because what has happened in the past. And guess what? I don't believe them at this point. Russia doesn't believe it. China doesn't believe it. And this is why they're starting their own credit rating agency, and they're pushing that agenda forward, and that new agency will be coming out, and we're going to have to see the difference between the Russia-China credit agency and the Western credit rating agencies and how they rate different banks, investments, companies, and I believe they're going to differ greatly. Now, out in Davos, at the Economic Forum, the World Forum, we see that Al Gore is out there, and he is looking to spend about $90 trillion over the next few years to redesign all the cities, as in all the cities on Earth. So people will live in more densely packed neighborhoods and don't need cars. This sounds like Agenda 21 to me, which most likely it is. That is one of the more ambitious and possibly outlandish ideas knocking around the World Economic Forum at Davos, Switzerland. The $90 trillion proposal came from Al Gore, and he's saying that, yes, this is something that we need to do to ward off climate warming or climate change. And we all know this is fake, phony, and false. We have to understand that Al Gore has been using carbon credits out in Europe. Of course, that has closed up because of this freezing cold weather, and we're not seeing climate global warming at this time. And we have to go back to the past when our government officials, when our religious leaders at the time, who was intertwined with government, told us many different things, and they all seemed to be false when evidence came out to counteract what they were saying. They told us the earth was flat, and guess what? It turns out that it isn't. The earth is the center of the universe. Guess what? They turned out that they were lying once again. Heavier bodies fall faster than lighter ones. Well, again, that turned out to be false. The atom is the smallest particle in the universe. They told us about global cooling. They told us about global warming. And again, here they are. It's always to push a different agenda. Now, those people that were coming out and telling the government that, no, this is wrong. The earth isn't flat. It is round. The earth isn't the center of the universe. The sun is the center and everything rotates around it. They were labeled nut jobs, conspiracy theorists. And we can see the same thing is happening once again. The only reason they're continually pushing climate change, global warming, is to push taxes on the people. Think about it. What is their plan to get rid of the problem that we have? What is their pinpointed plan? To take money from the people, period. That's it. Nothing else. That is the end of their plan. They have nothing else going for them. And right now, when they told us that snow is the thing of the past, that the earth will not get colder anymore, the icebergs will melt in the North Pole, guess what we're seeing? The actual opposite. And again, whatever our government tells us, it is always the opposite, no matter what they're talking about. And we can see right now that this whole agenda to spend $90 trillion is to pack people into small little areas, to free up the natural resources around the country and have people in a certain controlled area. That is what they're trying to do. Now, out in New York, they have a law called the SAFE Act. Now, this came into being because of what happened in Connecticut at Sandy Hook, where there was a shooting, which was a false flag, and we're starting to learn, and we all understand that it was a false flag event, and it was completely fake, phony, and false, and there's a huge amount of evidence that shows that, yes, it was a fake shooting to push the gun laws and their agenda to remove weapons from the people. But during that time, what happened was New York decided to push through a draconian law to violate the Second Amendment, and we can see that a lot of the people there do not agree with it, especially a lot of the sheriffs and a lot of other government officials inside New York are saying this law is a complete violation of the Second Amendment. And we have Fulton County Sheriff Thomas Laurie, who's telling the pistol permit carriers that they would soon receive invitations to renew their permits. Now, with this law, you can only have about 10 rounds in a magazine, and you have to renew your pistol permit every 5 years. And he's saying that it is time to renew, and what he's saying is that you should just throw it out. Sheriff Laurie then told his audience that he was speaking to, "I am asking everyone that gets those invitations to throw them in the garbage because that is where they belong. Laurie, let's have everyone's permit expire the same day, and let them see what they're going to do with it." He also told his constituents that he would refuse to enforce a law that requires them to recertify their pistol permits, protecting them from being punished for their civil disobedience. And we can see right now that this completely violates the Second Amendment. You can have a weapon. You really don't need any type of permit. According to the Second Amendment, nobody can limit what you can and can't have. Just read the Second Amendment. It's plain English and anyone can understand it. And we can see right now that there are sheriffs out there. There are people out there saying, no, enough is enough. We are not abiding by this. And this is what the Founding Fathers did back during the Revolutionary War. They opposed the things the British government were doing, and they said, no, we are not going to follow along. And this is how it begins. Now, we understand the government in the United States, the central bankers, have been trying to remove our rights. They're trying to get rid of the First Amendment. They're trying to get rid of the Second, the Fourth, and they're trying to convince everyone that, these aren't really rights. They're privileges, and the government can take them away at any time. Now, what's very interesting is Mark Dice came out with a video today, and it says, should Obama repeal the Bill of Rights to keep everyone safe from the Islamic State? Now, he went around interviewing different people that, should this be done? Should you give up your rights, and should Obama repeal them to keep you safe? And you would be shocked that these people out there are saying, yes, we should repeal the Bill of Rights. I should give up my rights for the government to keep us safe against the Islamic State. Now, do these people really understand what their rights consist of? First of all, they can't be repealed. You're born with them. Nobody can take them away. They're not privileges. When the government tells you that, it is a complete lie. But it is amazing to see how people are not informed or don't understand the rights of the people. How these rights give you the ability to speak out freely, to be safe against searches and seizures, even though our government is trying to get rid of all this. And if you haven't seen the video, you can see it on the X22Report.com site. Just go to today's episode, or just go to YouTube and type in Mark Dice, and you'll come up to his channels and you can watch this video. Now, out in Washington, it looks like there is another security breach. It looks like a quad drone crashed in the White House, and it was a small little toy type of drone that was flying around, and it's illegal to fly around in Washington. But the question is, where is the Secret Service? Where is all their sensors? Where is all their security with this type of thing? Now, are they trying to show right now that they need more security, they need to put up bigger fences, or are they trying to push another law? Because it's starting to seem like that. Now, there was a person that came forward that said, yes, I am the operator of this. I apologize. I'm sorry. But the question is, they didn't even see it coming until it crashed. The White House Press Secretary John Ertz confirmed a device had been found. The early indications are that it does not pose any sort of ongoing threat to anyone at the White House. And while this crashed, there was an immediate alert and a lockdown of the complex until the device was examined and cleared. American lawmakers are scrambling to come up with laws that would better regulate the use of intrusive flying machines. So you can see this could have been done to push an agenda. And again, as we know, those people that have jumped the fence, ran all the way up to the front door, that was so the White House and other government buildings could increase security and push the buffer zone further and further back, because as they realize They need to continually do this because they are very nervous about the American people. They're very nervous that they're going to riot. They're very nervous that they're going to make a move on the government buildings, and this is why they're putting in place more and more military personnel to guard against this. Why is this happening? Well, we understand when this system comes collapsing down, they're going to have to make sure they protect the government officials, because their biggest threat is the people of the United States, those people who lost their jobs, those people who are suffering, those people who can't find food, who blame the government for all this. And they're afraid of the people rising up. The same thing's happening through Europe. In Spain, Italy, France, and especially with this false flag event with Charlie Hebdo. You can see more draconian laws, more spying, more infringing on the people's rights, more military assets being placed on the streets. This is not for terrorism. This is for controlling the people. This is why this is all being done right now. Now, out in Ukraine, we understand there was an attack on Mariupol, and we're starting to see that, yes, this was a false flag event. We see that, the Ukrainian government, the U.S., NATO, it is all blaming it on these southeastern Russian people, and they're trying to make it look like, they just went out and they attacked people for no reason whatsoever. And it makes no sense why they would go ahead and attack this area. Why would they attack their own people? It makes no sense. They would not... this would not help push their agenda. Public opinion would be against them, and it makes no sense for them to do this whatsoever. And we see, again, a rebel spokesman said our militias have no weapon systems near Mariupol that would be able to shell that region at all. According to our intelligence, the artillery was fired from Syriza Krim neighborhood, less than 10 kilometers away. Ukrainian troops are stationed there. We believe it was a provocation. And we have to look at some of the facts. The facts are that Donbass freedom fighters observe the Minsk Protocol ceasefire terms. Ukraine has not. They have mounted an offensive. Fact, Kiev violated them straight away. Fact, rebels responded in self-defense. Their international law guaranteed them the right to do so. Fact, Kerry consistently and diabolically blames the southeastern people for Kiev crimes of war against humanity. Fact, instigated at the behest of Washington, Ukraine's puppet master pulling the strings. The Western media march is in lockstep with the Ukrainian government, and we can see right now they are pushing their agenda for war as hard as they possibly can. And you can see already from everything they've done, they are getting ready for their major offensive, and it is coming soon. They realize they need to accelerate the war, and this is exactly what they're doing. Now, Vera Kahovna Rada is out there saying that the IMF's monetary policy is austerity aimed at destroying our own nation. It suits us if we want to leave behind 5 to 7 million people, Rabinovich said. He added that not a single country has been rescued by the IMF loans. Only private entrepreneurs can do that. We need to quit hold of the economy, lift taxes on small, medium enterprises for 2 years, lift inspections for 2 years, stop borrowing internationally, and stimulate only those sectors that have the future, like IT or agriculture. He's saying all these loans, all this debt is not going to help the country. Look around at the EU. None of these countries have been helped. All of these countries have austerity. All these countries have been put into debt. And guess what? He is absolutely right. It does not help whatsoever. Now, the people in Ukraine, they are resisting the draft. Kiev authorities have announced that the next wave of mass mobilization will begin on January 28th, but Ukrainians seem less than enthusiastic. Experts say it would not be easy for authorities to carry out mobilization as the Ukrainian population realizes that Kiev's military operation in the east makes no sense. And it really doesn't, because they're attacking their own people. All these people living in Ukraine are Ukrainian. And these people who are hardworking people don't want to go out on an anti-terrorism force and go into war with their people. It makes no sense. A Ukrainian analyst said more and more statements were heard in Ukrainian society about readiness to sit in prison, but not to go to fight in the situation. The decision on mobilization will be another test for the Ukrainian authorities. And the only people that want war are the central bankers, Yatsenyuk, and the others that are now in the Ukrainian government. The United States, the EU. These are the only places that want to go to war because they did not get what they paid for. They paid for the entire country. They paid for the Southeast, the manufacturing, the production. They paid for Crimea. They want the ports on the Black Sea. And all they have is the western section of Ukraine. And guess what? It is not good enough, and we want it back. This is why they passed the Ukraine Freedom Act. This is why they've been funneling in lethal weapons, lethal aid, pushing their agenda as hard as they possibly can. And we can see right now, Kiev is out there attempting to regain control of towns controlled by Donetsk. During the day, the enemy has attempted to break through our defenses. This is coming from the Donetsk leader, and they're saying they're continually pushing, constantly shelling, and not letting up. Ukraine's military is boosting their forces in the east. Kiev sees no alternative to the Minsk ceasefire accords coming from President Petro Poroshenko. However, the Ukraine military is building up troops in the east to conduct an adequate response to the militia advancement. And what we're finding out, and there is a video on X22Report.com, is that there were English-speaking soldiers in Mariupol. Armed people in uniform speaking fluent English with no accent have been spotted in Mariupol in the aftermath of the rocket hit, fueling allegations that foreign private military contractors are serving among Ukrainian troops. And we know this for a fact. Those private people have been intermingled into the Ukraine forces, so you can't tell them apart. But as soon as they speak, you know who they are. But among footage shot in Mariupol, there are some videos showing armed men in military uniform who speak English fluently. As the correspondent points her microphone with a request to comment, the man covers his face with his one hand and says, "Out of my face, out of my face." And we can see that this was either NATO, US, and we know the U.S. is sending in military advisors, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they are there already, training with the Ukrainian military, intertwined into the military forces, pushing the agenda as hard as they can, and creating false flag events in there to get this war started. Now, the security at Ukraine's nuclear power plants has been enhanced by elements of missile defense, and we can see Putin is out there. And he says the Ukraine army is essentially a NATO legion, which doesn't pursue the national interest of Ukraine, but persists to restrict Russia. This is coming from President Putin. We often say Ukrainian army, but who is reality fighting there? There are indeed partially official units of armed forces, but largely there are the so-called volunteer nationalist battalions, said Putin. According to Putin, the Ukrainian army is not an army but a foreign legion. In the case, a foreign NATO legion, which of course doesn't pursue the interest of Ukraine. And we know for a fact this is exactly what's going on. They are pushing their agenda, and there will be a major, major offensive. And this thing is going to go red hot very, very soon. The Ukrainian government has introduced a state of emergency in the war-torn southeastern Donetsk and Lugansk regions and put all other territories on high alert. Basically, what this is martial law in the Donetsk and Lugansk area. So martial law has been put into place, and they said, in accordance with the Ukrainian Code of Civil Protection, the Cabinet of Ministers has adopted a decision to recognize an emergency situation at the state level. And we know they are pushing martial law as hard as they possibly can in these areas. Now, Kiev is out there, and they are asking NATO for additional military assistance in light of the deteriorating security situation in the southeast of the country. Article 15 of the NATO-Ukraine Charter on a distinctive partnership, which allows the possibility for Ukraine and NATO to carry out consultations when Ukraine perceives a direct threat to its territorial integrity, political independence, or security. So you can see this is why this false flag was set up, because now they're going to use Article 15. NATO will be brought into the situation, and they will be receiving more soldiers, more arms, and they're going to push this as hard as they can, because we have to remember the people of Ukraine are fighting this draft. They do not want to go to war, and Putin has said that this army is really not made up of Ukrainian soldiers who want to fight for Ukraine. Most of it is foreign nationals inside the army fighting this battle for the central bankers. The same thing's happening in Syria. The Free Syrian Army is not made up of Syrians. It's made up of paid mercenaries inside there being trained by the United States to fight Assad because they want a regime change. They want the entire country of Ukraine, and this is what they're pushing for. Now, Obama was out there, and he is saying we are deeply concerned about the latest break in the ceasefire and the aggression that these separatists with Russian backing, Russian equipment, Russian financing, Russian training, and Russian troops are conducting, Obama said. So you can see right now they are completely going after Russia just like they did during the first coup where it didn't go their way, where they lost Crimea, where they lost the southeastern section. They tried to blame Russia for MH17, and they're doing the same thing right now. And of course, all their satellite imagery, and you know they have satellites hovering right above the situation. They're watching the area very, very carefully, because if they can catch Russia doing something, they would broadcast this all over the place with clear 3D color satellite images, but so far they have no proof whatsoever, and this is why they continually show us these black and white 1970s blurry Photoshop satellite images, because you know, as I do, if they had proof, it would be all over the place, and the corporate media would be running with it all over the place non-stop. But so far they have no proof, because this is all propaganda. They're just making it up. Now, out in the Middle East, we understand things are deteriorating quite rapidly. We understand that Libya, the people there, they're trying the peace talks once again, and we understand that the people there are not going to give an inch. The central bankers aren't going to give an inch. They actually want those people out of government. They want the puppet government back in there. We understand the government in Yemen has fallen, and we see right now that Lebanon is having a very rough time. Right now, the U.S. Embassy in Beirut issued a security message over the weekend warning its citizens against traveling to Lebanon. And they're saying this is just a security message to keep everyone on their toes and be careful. The U.S. Embassy will be closed to the public in Yemen until further notice, out of an abundance of caution and care for our employees and others who may be visiting the embassy. We are continuously analyzing the security conditions inside Yemen, and right now they're taking precautions. Why? Because the puppet government has fallen. The people have taken back their country, and they're scratching their heads, and I mean the central bankers, U.S. government, trying to figure out a way where they can get back into this country and remove that puppet government. Now, of course, who are they going to drone strike at this time? Because the people have risen up, and they can't fire at the people who've taken over the government, because this makes no sense whatsoever. So they're trying to figure out what their next step is, and we see that there are 2 warships sitting outside Yemen waiting for orders to do something. Now, Libya's recognized government said it forced another oil tanker from delivering fuel. It diverted it to its ports instead of the ports which are controlled by the people of Libya, and we can see right now they will not let oil out of the entire area. They don't want oil coming in. They don't want oil coming out. And once the people of Libya try to sell this oil not using the dollar, same thing in Yemen, this is when we have the problems. And we're going to have to watch this very, very carefully. Now, like I said in the past reports, the Islamic State They are trying to go into areas where the United States would like to go back into to make a case of why they need the armed forces. And we see they're trying to maneuver them into Yemen, into Libya, into Lebanon, and of course into Afghanistan. And we have to remember what John Kerry said, that we will be pushing military forces back into these areas. He said this in the World Economic Forum in Davos, and we can see they are definitely making a play for this. Now, out in Syria, President Assad has said U.S.-led airstrikes against the Islamic State should be subject to an agreement with Damascus, and they should use Syrian ground troops to wipe out the Islamic State. And we know this is not going to happen. They didn't even ask permission. The United States government and the coalition forces just went into a sovereign country and did whatever they wanted to do. The Syrian president is also saying that the U.S. plans to train vetted rebels to fight the Islamic State is a complete illusion. They know exactly what's going on, and he understands as soon as they're trained, they defect right over to the Islamic State because they are a proxy army for the U.S. government. And again, Assad is out there and he's saying that Israel is continually attacking Syria. This is completely against international laws. This is a declaration of war. And they make a joke about it. They say that whenever we make advances in some places, Israel comes out and they attack in order to undermine the army. And it's very clear that's why some in Syria joke, how can you say that the Islamic State doesn't have an air force? They do. It's the Israeli Air Force. And we can see this is absolutely true, because every time the Islamic State needs to be pushed into certain areas, all of a sudden Israel flies into certain areas and bombs the areas. We also see the United States bombing areas so the Islamic State can maneuver into certain areas. And yeah, they do have an air force, and this was planned a year ago when they tried to push that false flag event of chemical weapons in Syria. We had all the aircraft carriers, destroyers out in the Mediterranean, and their plan was to have the United States Air Force and coalition forces use bombers for bombing Syria so the Free Syrian Army can maneuver throughout Syria. And we see the same thing happening now. They're just using the Islamic State, which was trained by the United States government, Israel, UK, and other nations. Now we see that Malaysian Airlines website in some regions was hacked by a group calling itself the Cyber Caliphate with the slogan, ISIS will prevail. Now we have to remember the Malaysian airliners, that airliner was shot down over Ukraine, and we also MH370 was missing, just gone missing, disappeared. But we also understand Israel does have a duplicate plane with longer range sitting in a hangar. And this is very interesting that all of a sudden we have a hack and it's saying that the Islamic State will prevail. We can see how they're trying to fit the puzzle pieces together, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see that plane come out of the hangar and people say, look, the Islamic State has a Malaysian plane, they took it over, and they're flying it towards Europe. They're flying it towards the United States. And we're going to have to watch this very carefully and keep this in the back of our minds to understand that this is a false flag event. Now, it seems like Russians were busted in Manhattan. Don't worry, the FBI is on top of this, and they busted a Russian spy ring. Now, what's very interesting, all this has happened during the time where Ukraine forces are making an offensive on the southeastern people. S&P just downgraded Russia. They're looking to put more sanctions, and now they're showing that they've captured Russians, and they're saying that they're a part of a ring attempting to collect economic intelligence and recruit people in New York City. And we're going to have to follow this story a little bit further to see what's really going on. And I see that this might just be something the FBI kind of set up right now, because we know the FBI does this quite often. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.